one of the principles of the life course is called the three buckets of support. And this is researched information that says that when people are trying to plan and organize, that they need three things to be able to actually feel confident in the decisions that they're going to make. The first bucket is discovery and navigation, that you need to know what's out there. How can you decide where you want to have your apartment, or what kind of relationships you want to have if you don't know what's out there? Who's the pool? So finding out as much information as you can, connecting and networking, that's being able to talk to people that have had similar experiences to you, so that you can learn from them and share stories with each other. And then finally, having access to goods and services so that you can actually pursue what it is that you want. So for me, support groups is so great because we actually have a chance to do all three of those things in a support group setting. Support groups bring people together that have a common interest, they have common roles, or demographically, they're kind of in a similar situation, and they're able to learn from each other. Sometimes we provide educational information. We always provide resources so that you know what's going to happen and you can talk to each other. So some of our support groups are divided by a role a person plays, whether that's that they're a dad, or maybe they're a self-advocate. We have groups that are divided by common interests, like having an interest in independent living or housing, and or a demographic, like our groups for people that are transitioning into adult life, or our caregivers for older adults. So that's sort of how we've chosen to organize our support groups, is finding that commonality that's going to help connect people. And then within those groups, as I said, we want to make sure you're getting information from us. So often in a support group, we'll start off with a theme, provide a little bit of information to kind of get the conversation rolling, and then spend a good amount of time in the encouragement zone, where families are going to talk about what they're experiencing. People with disabilities are going to talk about how they've applied what we talked about in different settings in their lives. They'll ask questions and maybe answer each other's questions. And then while that's happening, our team of very knowledgeable staff is thinking about resources that we can bring to the table when issues come up, so that we can share those resources with you. And I shared an integrated support star because often we'll use a tool like this to make sure that we're pulling resources from many different aspects, that you're getting some technology resources, some things based in the community, some things to focus on about your person's strengths and skills that can be built, and also eligibility type of resources. So something that happens a lot with the family support team is that we think about if we're meeting the needs of the people that come to us for support. So we have started many new groups over the years, and we've dissolved many groups over the years. And the reason we will start a group, it's kind of organic. As we are fielding information and referral phone calls, or doing navigation with families, you start to notice that there's issues that start to dominate the conversation. All of a sudden, you're getting a whole bunch of calls about struggles with housing, or a bunch of young women that just don't seem to have a good network of support to be able to get their needs met. And so as those things happen, we start to evaluate, would this make a good group? What would we want this to look like? Who do we want to be at the table? And so when we start a new group, we try and market it very clearly as to who the target audience is and what we're going to be covering. It's incredibly important that if you're interested in a group, that you let us know. And even if you can't go, if you're interested in a group and we've scheduled it on a Wednesday evening when you have your personal training happening, let us know. I'd really like to come to this, but Wednesday is not good for me. Because the interesting thing about a support group is that if you don't have more than a couple of people there, you're not going to really get the support you need. And so unfortunately, we've had to dissolve groups that I thought would be really amazing, important groups for people, but we weren't able to do them because we didn't have the interest that we thought. So that's the entire presentation component of this. Would anybody in the panel like to add on anything that I said?
I guess I would add that you had one of the core components of a good support group, right? And I just want to emphasize that some of these support groups really focus on that encouragement piece, and some of them really focus on that information and resources piece. Ideally, you would get all three of those things, but some of them are a little bit heavier in one category than the other.
And that should be driven by the people that are coming. You know, if we're doing our job as moderators, facilitators of a group, we start to get a feel for that group. And Marianne will probably be able to talk about that when she talks about caregivers for older adults. They've been a cohesive group for probably over a decade now. So when that group comes together, we tend to sit back a lot because they are going to drive that conversation about the connections that they have with each other. All right. So we're going to go now to the ARC support group page. I think this is a great place if you are thinking about maybe this is something I'd like to have. I'd like to gain some support from other people that are connected to me. We've got a whole long list of groups. Look how long it is. It just keeps going and going and going. So that was the long list of support groups we offer. We do have a question, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but if somebody wants to answer it, just raise your hand. Somebody's wanting to know, how do I figure out what group I should join? Is there somebody I can talk to? How do I figure that out? I have an answer, but I'd love to know what your answers are.
This is a great question, and it's not an unfamiliar question either. So there's a couple different routes you could probably take if you're already working within the St. Louis Arc with somebody that you're comfortable with chatting about your needs and asking a group that they might suggest would be right for you. You can always go about it that way, or you can go through our intake process through our contact us form that you can find on our SLARC website and let us know that you're interested in getting more information about support groups. And that'll link you to our intake and eligibility specialist, April, and she can either discuss it with you or hand you off to one of us navigators to also discuss with you some different ones that may be best for your situation and your lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I will also just add that sometimes joining a new support group can feel really intimidating for the first time. And so I think if you're noticing that you might fit into a couple of these boxes, it's okay to just start with one. And then when you go, ask the facilitator and say, hey, do you know anything about this other support group? Or, hey, I was looking through this list and can you go down this list with me? Because I do think that any one of us would be happy to take the time to really go through that list with you and see which ones you might be a good fit for and you might enjoy. Or just get you connected. Maybe it's just adding another person, but yeah, I think just starting with, if you're not going to go through that process, right? If you find one that you're like most interested in, any one of us would be happy to help get you connected to others too.
Fantastic. I'm going to stick with you too. Gabby, I'm coming back to you. Somebody mentioned my getting on an email list. And so for all of us, if you participate in our group once or express an interest, we're going to put you on a master list for the group. Gabby, what happens when you get on that master list? Can you describe the kind of email you would send out after a support group?
Absolutely. So after our support groups, we all feel like it's really important that we also share with you all of the tips and tools and tricks that we had already talked about and send it to everyone who may be on our email list that was or wasn't present. So after attending a group or even just being a part of that email list, a couple days down the road, you'll likely see a follow-up email that's going to talk about what we talked about, some links, and what to look forward to the next time, just so that everybody has everything at their fingertips. So you don't have to worry in present at the moment to take as many notes. And we want you to just be able to get that information in multiple ways.
It's really hard to get out and go to support groups, especially after a long day. But if you stick with it, kind of how women's group has looked and co-ed group and the fabulous friends, this is huge support for them. So just getting into the regular rhythm of attending, it can really help you create a good support system, which is so needed. So thank you for bringing that up, Emma. I apologize if I'm repeating what you said.
I think we talked about it pre-meeting, so that's great. Yeah, women's group started with just a few people, and I won't name names, but there's one young woman that's been attending since the very first session. And back then and I'm speaking on behalf of her experience, so I apologize if any of this is incorrect. But she wasn't as connected as she is now. And now it's interesting because she comes to women's group and there are other women and she'll be like, oh, well, I talked to this person, the other night, and this is what this person said. And I was really, validated or reassured because we talked outside of the group. And that wasn't something that she necessarily had connection to before joining, but she stuck with it. I mean, it took a while for her to find people that she really felt strongly connected to, but she kept coming regardless of whether she felt an immediate connection to somebody else or not. And yeah, the importance of just kind of sticking with it and continuing to show up is how we meet new people and make new friends.
I'm so glad, you guys. That's really kind of comes back to the very last thing I wanted to say. So that helps me to wrap up here. I think that people, it is hard to make time for the groups. And I think you're also putting yourself in a vulnerable position. I noticed that you all had the word vulnerability in the description for the women's group. And it's not just the women's group. If you're talking about being an older parent and you're worried about what's going to happen when you're gone, that is super vulnerable. If you're talking about something that, your kid in school is struggling with and how it's impacting your family, that is vulnerable. And the only way to feel like you are able to have those conversations is to come and get to know people where you feel like you can trust them. So we don't expect you to necessarily walk into a group and immediately share your whole story. Come and listen, come and see who these people are, see if it feels like a space for you. And if it is, I think you'll find that it holds a lot of value. I'm in a support group at the ARC through one of our kind of ERG efforts. And it's really nice to be able to talk to people who I know have a certain commonality with me about what's going on. It's helpful to have that resource in my life. So I wish that for you as well. Thank you all for giving me this time. Thank all of you out there for coming and listening to us today. I hope you'll consider a support group, whether it's at the ARC or somewhere else, that will really help you. We did have somebody ask about St. Charles in the pre-questions, and I will say our groups that are virtual, people come from those groups from out of state, from all over the place. So if there's no charge, no funding connected to support groups, so anybody that can get there can come. So if you're in Illinois, if you're in St. Charles or Jefferson County or Franklin County and you can come, please do. We'd love to see you.